What's going on, boys and girls? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the first ever question of the week episodes where we can answer any questions that you guys have about real estate investing. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the content that we're dropping, and make sure to smash that like button to help us out with the YouTube algorithm. And of course, comment your questions down below so we can keep doing these videos and answer any questions you guys might have. So to jump right in, the first ever question of the week comes from Corey Martinson. And to sum it up, it says, how did you get the money to even start doing this business? And this is an awesome question. I get it all the time. Every single time I post on my Instagram before and afters or anything about real estate, people are always asking, how do you buy these properties? How do you fund deals? Every time that I hold my meetup once a month, this is one of the number one questions that I always get is, how do you fund deals and how do you come up with the money? So make sure to stick around to the end because I will answer this question in detail. But first, to answer it right, I have to give you guys some context and kind of go into my backstory, how I got started personally, and that will answer the question along the way. So my story, how did I even get involved with this? How did I get started with real estate investing, all that? This goes way back to probably 2012 or 2013 when I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You guys have probably heard of it. Ton of people that are involved in real estate credit this book to getting them started. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's a book that's not really filled with too many actionables, but it is a good mindset shift book on a lot of things real estate and assets. So after reading this book, I kind of decided that I want to own apartment buildings someday, and that became my new goal. So owning apartment buildings is a great goal, but not really actionable when you have no idea what you're doing and you're young and all that type of thing. I was in school at the time, I was working full time, I was doing music, all that stuff. So fast forward a couple years, I didn't really take any action at all. And I ended up meeting with my roommate's boss, who was the only person that I even knew that had even owned a rental property or anything like that. This guy's a business owner, but real estate investing is not even his main gig. I just knew that he had owned apartments or duplexes or something in the past. So I wanted to meet with him and just kind of get his input on things and where I was going. I ended up underwriting some apartment deals that I just found on LoopNet just to see if the numbers would work. I was using a free spreadsheet that I found online to do that. So underwrote the deals. I brought him what I was working on, basically just to say, am I doing this right and where should I go from here? Met with him and he looks at it and he said, yes, this all looks right. You know, this is great, yada, yada, yada. But there's a couple of major problems here. One, you don't have any money. And two, even if you did have money, no bank is gonna lend you $3 million to buy this 40-unit apartment complex. I'm like, okay, makes sense. He said, I recommend that you put this on the back burner for a couple of years and just focus on increasing your income, stack up some money, and then go after this later on. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But then that also brought me kind of back to step one, where I didn't know what to do. Put it on the back burner again and just kept doing what I was doing. So now, knowing what I know now about real estate, that was great advice, but not 100% true. There are ways to buy apartment buildings without any money, through partnerships mostly. You know, if you can partner with someone and they bring all the money and the lendability to the deal and you're just the operating partner in the deal, there are ways to buy buildings like that with no money. But back then, it actually was probably better advice, instead of giving me that advice, was to make your own money first, because looking back now, I wouldn't have been able to bring any type of value to the partnership. I didn't know anything about real estate. I didn't know how to find deals, nothing. All I had was that I wanted to do it. So even if I knew someone that had the money to put this deal together, I wouldn't have been able to bring anything to the partnership anyway. So fast forward another few months from that meeting, I was just listening to podcasts like Bigger Pockets, and which is a great place to start if you're totally new. And that's where I found out about wholesaling. And this seemed like a strategy to me that I could do with very little money out of pocket, and it was kind of a means to an end to be able to buy these apartment buildings, because I thought I would be able to stack up a bunch of money and then eventually purchase the buildings on my own. So at this time, this was probably about early 2017, when I was just learning about wholesaling. I found out about a podcast called Wholesaling Inc., which is still going today. At the time, they only had about 130 episodes, and it's basically a pitch for different types of coaching that they offer. But there's some really great info in that podcast about wholesaling. So what I did, I was working at the valet at Atlantis here in Reno a couple days a week, And while I would work, I would listen. We had these little pockets right here in our little monkey outfits that we had to wear. And I would put my phone just on speaker while I was in people's cars, and I would listen. And then if I heard something that I didn't already know, I would write it down. So I had this notes in my phone, which was how to wholesale step by step. So I put together this list so I didn't need the coaching. So I had all the information that I needed after listening to 130 episodes of this one podcast. So fast forward a couple months, as most of you guys probably know, and some of you guys might not know, back in that time, I was also a rapper. Back then, I was working a couple days a week. I had kind of phased out my work hours at the valet while I phased up my income from music. And then I got the opportunity to do Warped Tour in summer of 2017. So that allowed me to quit my job, and then we went on the road for the entire summer. You know, when a new podcast would come out, I'd be listening to that while we're driving or throughout the day or whatever, just in headphones, and always adding to that list. So while we were on tour, I just kept increasing my education. And then right when we got home from tour, now this was the first time that I never had a job to go to, and I was just making music a lot full time still, but I had some extra time to really focus on wholesaling. So that's what I did. As soon as we got home, I started going hard with that, and really for the first time ever, actually trying to do something in real estate instead of just learn about it. So throughout the fall of 2017, that's when I started doing some basic marketing that I could do with very little money out of pocket. This included bandit signs, mailing free lists like tax delinquent lists that you can get from the county, posting Craigslist ads, etc. So I only spent probably a couple $100, maybe $500 doing marketing to try to find deals, to try to put together my first wholesale deal. And that's exactly what happened. In the future, I'll do a full video on my first ever deal, because it was the deal from hell, and everything that could have gone wrong did, besides the deal falling apart completely. I did close it throughout the fall, and then into the spring of 2018, I was doing my first couple wholesale deals. I closed that first deal in January of 2018. And then reinvested the money that I made. It was only like $2,000 or something, but that's when I got my LLC. I put the rest of it back into marketing to then do more deals upcoming. And I will add that I did have a mentor throughout that first wholesale deal. Looking back, they didn't really do much for me in terms of things that I didn't already know. I already knew everything that I needed to know, at least to get that first deal done. But what it did do for me was keep me accountable. I'm pretty self-accountable and pretty hardworking anyway, but it does add that extra layer of accountability when you have to answer to someone once a week. So, you know, they're telling me what to do. Come that weekly call, it was like, oh, I need to be making offers, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that, when I may have not kept myself accountable to get that first deal done. So fast forward another couple months from that first deal, sometime in the spring of 2018, that's when I met my current partner, Wes. He was working for a large institutional buyer that has an office here in town. They buy in several markets all over the country, mostly at foreclosure auctions at the courthouse. So he was a project manager for them, managing rehabs, all the flips that they were doing. And I think we met on Bigger Pockets. He got an incentive for sourcing off-market deals. So he would network with the wholesalers in town. That's how I met him. So I would wholesale that company some deals through Wes. He was the point of contact for getting those deals done. So 2018 goes by. I did quite a few wholesale deals. I also almost lost everything because I tried to scale too fast and threw away a bunch of money to the tune of like 25 grand at one point. Come early 2019, Wes approached me and said, hey, do you want to partner up? You know, we can do this on our own. You keep doing all the marketing and the acquisition side, and then we can now have the option to wholesale or flip, and I'll manage the rehabs, and I have a real estate license so I can be the listing agent when we go to sell. So that's what we decided to do pretty early 2019. We did wait until June of 2019 to officially partner because he didn't want to have any type of bad blood with his old company or anything like that. We didn't want to be actively competing against someone that he was still employed by. So we made kind of a couple month plan where he was going to quit and I was going to start ramping things up on our end, and then we officially partnered June of 2019. So that brings me to the essence of this question, is how did you guys get the money to start doing this? So we did start with some money, but not all that much. Each of us brought $10,000 to the partnership. So in the operating account right off the bat, we had $20,000 to start. And in addition to the money that we brought to the partnership, we also brought experience on both sides. I kind of already knew what I was doing from wholesaling as far as finding deals, and he already knew what he was doing as far as managing rehabs from his previous employers. That's also kind of an important step to how we were able to do this so quickly from the ground, is that we were already kind of experienced in what we were doing. So we agreed that we wanted to get a little bit more money in our operating accounts for the first flip that we were going to take on. So the first few leads that we got, we decided to wholesale them, even though we may have been able to flip these ones. So before we bought our first flip, I think we had somewhere between 40 and 50,000 in the bank, and then we got the lead where it was a great deal and we were confident enough to actually buy something and try to do it ourselves. So for that first deal, you might be asking, hey, you guys only had 40 or 50 grand. How did you end up buying this property that was, I think the purchase price was 215,000. We put 40,000 into the rehab. We financed this deal the same way that we still finance most of our deals to this day, and that's using two different lenders. The first lender that we use is a hard money lender. There's a bunch of them out there. We used Lending Home for this one. Another brand is Civic. These guys specialize in financing fix and flip opportunities for people. So they're pretty lenient on what they'll give you, and they also finance the rehab portion of the project as well. It's kind of a hybrid between private money, where you can just do whatever you want because it's cash, and then a more traditional lender where they're gonna go through the appraisal and home inspections, and it can't be in disrepair and all that type of stuff when you go to apply for a mortgage. So Lending Home gave us about 80% of the purchase price and 100% of the rehab money, which I'll go into how that works in just a minute. So for the other 20% that we needed to close this deal, we got that from a private investor that happened to be Wes's mom for this first one. So friends or family are great for any type of private money. So I don't remember the exact amounts, but I think we borrowed about 50,000 from her, and then the rest of it came from Lending Home. So we were no money out of pocket to get into this deal, and then we knew we had the rehab money coming from Lending Home. So as far as the rehab money goes, this is where it can get a little tricky for doing a no money out of pocket flip. Like I said before, we did have that 40 or 50,000 sitting in the operating account, but how draws work, you actually have to front the money and at least get the job started before you start to take draws from the lender. So I think we did do a few draws on this one. Draws are kind of a pain in the ass to use because you have to pay like $300 or something to have an inspector come out to sign off on how much of the job is complete. And then the lender says, okay, they look at the scope that we submitted and they said, you guys said you were gonna spend $10,000 on the kitchen. Inspector says it's 50% done, so here's $5,000. So just to recap, this is a way that you can get into flipping with no money out of pocket, with the small caveat of just fronting the rehab money, but very little out of pocket compared to what seems like buying a $200,000 asset and putting another $50,000 into it. Now that being said, like I said, we get this question a lot, and I always encourage people, if you have no experience in real estate or rehab or anything like that, I always encourage people to wholesale a couple deals first before you go out and buy something. There is real risk when you actually buy real estate, whereas wholesaling has little to no risk. But if you don't know what you're doing in wholesaling, all you do is get something under contract, and then you have an inspection contingency in there that allows you to walk away if you can't find a buyer to assign the deal to. So there's no risk except for the dollars that you're spending on marketing to find these properties in the first place. So through wholesaling, I learned, most importantly, the language of the industry. You know, it's pretty easy to spot bullshit on people that don't know what they're talking about in a certain industry. So I learned how people talk. I learned how to find deals. I learned how to talk to sellers. I learned about contracts. I learned about the escrow process. I learned about the entire process of buying a property without ever buying a property. Before wholesaling, I had never purchased a house for a flip. I had never purchased a house for myself. So I was totally new, totally green to the entire industry. The main risk that new investors have is not knowing the numbers. They don't even think to factor in the basic holding costs or closing commissions or anything like that. That being said, there are a bunch of different ways to do this business. You know, there's creative financing where you can get into a deal with very little money or no money down, and there's always opportunities for partnerships, whether it's a money partner or if you have remodeling experience, maybe partner with a real estate agent so they can bring you the deal and then sell it when you're done. Or if you don't have remodeling experience, maybe partner with a general contractor and you fund the deal with a private money investor, try to bring some value to the partnership that way. All right, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. Make sure to drop a comment down below and ask us any questions that you want to see on episode of the week. Make sure to smash that like button for us, help us out with the YouTube algorithm, and let this content spread to any other people that might be interested in real estate. And if you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with all the content that we're dropping at least once a week on this channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.